Hello, welcome to Lord Havoc's Marvel Champions Custom Content Extravaganza. I have another creator spotlight for you today. This is the episode 4 of season 2, and it's very important that I have the guest that I have with me because he was on episode 4 of season 1. So it's how these things work. It's the continuation and stuff. This is my very first part 2, mainly because my goal for season 2 was to sort of not only get to know other creators on the community, because Lord knows I didn't go through all of them in season 1, but also to sort of deep dive a little bit more into the creation process. Like, what exactly is the process that creators follow when they're making their stuff, and each creator has their own process, which I think is awesome. And so the more I can talk about sort of the creation process and help people who are just starting out, so well, what would be the best way for you? So pick and choose the best way for you to create your stuff. And luckily for me, the creator that I have with me today had the exact same idea and even suggested it on the episode that he was on. And I was like, sweet, let's do it. So without further ado, I have the magnificent BerettaBeast with me today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back on.
No
Feel
worries.
honored.
It's an honor for me. It's I'm really excited we're doing this. You make really cool stuff, and we've discussed like your creation process outside of the chat, and I love it. I love it. So the opportunity to sort of deep dive into it's going to be good. So we're going to talk about it's a couple of your heroes, well, a few, three, Rorschach, Martian Manhunter, and Miss Martian. These are heroes that you chose that you wanted to talk about. And we're going to talk about a scenario. It's quite often in the spotlights, it's come up, sort of like the difference between heroes and scenarios, like how hard it is to sort of create a scenario. And I agree. It's bloody hard. I try to get the balance correct and stuff. And sometimes even the official stuff doesn't quite get it right. So, although they've gotten a lot better at it recently. Heroes, I think, even though they're technically easier, I guess, they have their own challenges. I mean, there's a balance there. And one of the cool things about Marvel Champions is that you personify the hero, right? Their kit is designed for you to be them, right? And the kit is all the things in their kit are meant to represent them, so that you can then be them in the game versus the scenario, and that's not easy, right? So because there's some heroes have been around for donkeys, and they've got a lot of stuff going on, but you've only got 15 cards to play with, or 16 if you cheat and do like a permanent weapon upgrade. So it's not easy stuff, and I think one of the things that you do well is doing that, like the right balance of what to include or what not to include. You didn't pick him to put on the spotlight thing here, but your Superman is magnificent. I prefer Supergirl, of course, but Superman is magnificent, and really personifies the idea of, because Superman, you could easily have like a 50 card deck. he's got ridiculous powers. Yeah. It's just he's unbelievably powerful. Like, he does all this stuff and all the things that sort of represent him. Sure, easy, but you managed to do it in the set that you did. So, I really let's go into it. Enough rambling from me. So,
well,
take it away.
Honestly, I didn't pull Superman over here because we already talked a bit about him last time. But you do bring up, like, that was a really, really tough decision to make with making Superman. Is, like you said, he has like a billion different powers. So, like, which ones make it into the 15?
Yeah.
And kind of my, like, idea for that is, like, things like heat vision, frost breath, flight. Those are all things that are, like, not exclusive to Superman, but more a Kryptonian.
Yes.
So I tried to kind of do the things, like, exclusive to him, like the journalism and, like, like his, like, I don't know, will to help, and just that sort of angle, more than like he can do a heat vision blast or something like that.
Awesome. So to get around that problem, you're focused more on his personality and who he is as a hero, not necessarily just the cool stuff that he can do. That's brilliant.
And
that's awesome.
I remember when me and you talked last, we were mentioning like specific stories about cards and
Yep.
whatnot, and his resource card, the Helping Hand. Um, I
Yep.
don't know how many times I had somebody suggest to me to remove this card,
Wow.
just because they like so many people hated this card for so long that it was taking up 3 slots in his deck where like a Heat Vision could go or like a Frost Breath could go or anything like that.
Right.
But it was one of those like usually you really want to listen to feedback, but this was one of those things where I was like, no, I don't care. I'm gonna keep it.
I just did a spotlight chat the other day. That hasn't been uploaded yet, but spoiler for that one, where we talk about that very thing is feedback.
Mm,
Is
yep.
when do you listen to the feedback and when do you stop
Hmm.
listening to the feedback? Because I had that problem fairly recently with one of my heroes, and um, I think the magic spot is does it help it mechanically work better in the game
Hmm.
versus is this now totally trashed your theme? Like, what is the intent
Yeah.
that you wanted? So I'm glad you ignored the advice on this one because this is Superman. This is what he
Hmm.
does. So he's there to help others. I mean, a job for Superman. Um, that's what he's meant to do, right? He's meant to defend
Hmm.
and help people. Yeah. So yeah, perfect. Well done. Oh, so good. Can't rest it better though. All right, moving on. All right. So these are the ones that you wanted to talk about. So, if you could, let's go. I mean, pick the specific hero, so let's go from the very start. So, why did you choose that particular hero? Did you have an idea first, or did you have the hero and you sort of made the idea to go around it? What was it like getting the art? Do you have like a design document? Do you follow like the Rainy sort of design process, which is pretty close to what I do, or do you follow a completely separate thing? Like that's some sort of stuff. For the rest of it, I really want you to do most of the talking, and I'll just sort of interject
Hmm.
every now and again with a bit of flavor. All right,
Cool.
cool, awesome.
Uh, yeah, like I don't really have like a hard set like process. I was watching some of your hacks interview where he talked about like what it was like 3 different methods that he had, which was
Yeah,
like theme first, mechanic first, or art first, or something like that.
yeah.
I kind of float through those 3 as well. Um, a lot of times it's theme first, a lot of times it's mechanics first. I feel like early on, when I was first starting, it was more mechanic driven.
Uh-huh.
Um, just like I had a cool idea for something, and I would think like, who fits this idea?
Yeah.
But it kind of more evolved into like I think it's more fun personally to think like, oh, here's this hero. How do I portray them in this card game? Um,
Awesome.
but interestingly enough, I think these 3 were all mechanics first
Oh, okay.
that I came up with.
And then you
Uh,
went and found a hero to match the mechanic.
yeah, yep. So like for Rorschach, for example, I'm a big Magic the Gathering player, so I played like a big Scry deck, which for those who don't know is like you look at the top however many cards of your deck, rearrange them how you want, and put them back.
Yep.
And I thought that would be like a cool way to capture like an detective or something like that,
Mm.
of like looking at the top cards of the encounter deck, rearranging them and whatnot. Um, and I didn't want to do Batman because, for obvious reasons, a perfect Batman's already been made. Even though I then later went and made a
I
Batman,
know. I was about to say that.
was
It's like, what's going on here?
that was only because I finally had an idea that wasn't just copy pasting ES's Batman, so that was
It,
fun.
it is a
But
it's an unspoken rule of my show that ES gets mentioned every episode. So shout
yep.
out to the perfect Batman by ES.
But yeah, so I was trying to think of a detective to do this for,
Cool.
and I think the first one I wanted to do was the Question.
Ah, cool.
Um, yeah, I really liked him in
Yeah.
the
Well, Rorschach
Justice
is just the
League.
question anyway.
Oh, yeah, basically,
Rorschach
he's
is
just a more
just
violent
yeah,
Question.
yeah, yeah. he wasn't allowed to. He wasn't allowed to use the question, Alan Moore. So it's the same. All the. I'm just diving into some nerd crap here, but it's just all the Watchmen are just analogs of the characters that he wasn't allowed to use. So.
Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, so just kind of tried to think of one, and I think a few people suggested some characters, and then landed on Rorschach. And then I think I talked about this last time too. I'm very visual with my card design. Like the things on the text and in the obviously also the art need to look good on the card.
Right.
So I looked at some Rorschach art and found this one by Jim Lee and was like, okay, yeah, that has to be a hero. That just looks
Can
good.
I ask why you didn't go Detective Chimp, the greatest detective in the DC universe?
Yeah, I think I probably did look at Detective Chimp, and I remember ES like reskinned the heroic intuition into Detective Chimp, so I always think of him with that.
I'm only joking. Yeah. I'm not a fan.
But so yeah, it was the scry idea that went into this, and tried to think of how to do it. And then the whole like, there's kind of like a sub theme for him, which is overpaying for cards with mental resources. And that kind of came about from like, he's basically just a crazy person that is like what do you call it, like a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
So he's like overthinking everything, and like, just puts too much effort into everything and is like way over the line. So I thought like overpaying for resources was kind of a cool route to go with that.
Right. So you started with the mechanic of the scrying thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he scries through the encounter deck, right?
Yep.
And then you decided on Rorschach instead of Detective Chimp.
Yeah.
And then you created the mini game of the mini aspect of the mental overpaying resources thing. Once you already had Rorschach, because you thought that matched Rorschach himself, or you just thought it was just an extra cool mechanic?
I thought that matched Rorschach. I was trying to think of like how to translate the scry thing into Rorschach.
Yep.
And so that kind of started like, usually when I start making a hero, I'll start with the hero card, and then I'll think of like one or two like core cards that I really would want to design alongside the hero. And so that was like him, his mask, and his journal.
Yeah.
And so the scry thing kind of came about, then the overpaying for resources thing came about, and then the journal was kind of me leaning into that. Like, that's where he keeps his notes, and like, so it makes sense that it would generate a mental resource, and then just a little mechanical flair on top of that. But
his mask says after you use investigate, but his ability is not called investigate. Where does he get the investigate ability from?
So yeah, the investigate was like a keyword I made up, which means look at the top 3 cards of the encounter deck and discard one of them.
One, yes. Investigate X. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So I think actually I remember having like conversations with a few different people like that. I came up with this keyword investigate. Not that it's like super unique, but excuse me. I came up with that keyword and then was trying to like who to put it on.
So that's cool. Now, did you create the keyword because you had? So now that you've got Rorschach and he's an investigator, did you then create investigate to go along with him, and then to be used for other stuff, or where did the idea for investigate come from?
Well, that kind of became investigate after it was Rorschach, because I remember actually like ES was talking about like, is it like a magical thing where like, because that's usually how it's associated, is when you scry. Yeah. That's like a magical ability.
Well, you're looking at the future.
So
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was kind of where it started, and then I wanted to make it about investigating the encounter deck. So
I love it. Awesome. So this really shows the fluid nature of creation, right? It says when you had the mechanic, you chose the hero to go with it, and then choosing the hero then inspires you to do extra stuff.
Mhm.
How would you then sort of make that work? That's awesome. All right, I'm gonna hit you with a hard one. This one
Mhm.
it just baffles me. There's no real sense. There's doesn't seem to be any specific rule, right? Except obviously for Hulk about how you do this. How do you determine what the resource is going to be on the card?
Mhm.
Do you have a formula for that? Because I do, but I want to hear yours first. And why are they not all mentals in order to then to
Uh,
help his ability?
yeah, that's a really good question. Uh,
I knew it.
usually, usually I just kind of like, oh, this is an attack card, this is physical. This is a defend card, this is energy. This is a thwart card, it's mental. But like the way they did it, at least like from my understanding, in the core set especially, is like, is this card depicting like some sort of physical act? Then it's a physical. Is it, some sort of energy power or something like that? Then it's energy. So that's where I start,
Mm.
just as placeholders. And then after that, like obviously this deck needed more physical, or sorry, more mentals than most. So I would just, change some to mental. Like
All right, I'm gonna
it
deep
doesn't really.
dive. I'm gonna deep dive. You're under the spotlight. Why is
Yeah.
brutal interrogation, which sounds like something physical, mental?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like that, to be totally honest, that might have just been like, oh, he needs more mentals. I'm going to make this a mental. But like
Okay,
for this card specifically, I feel like you can definitely make the argument that it's mental.
that's right. Because he's using brutal interrogation doesn't mean he's beating them up. It could just be
Hmm.
intimidating them with his voice and stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I follow the same. I follow the same method you just did. It's physical action or
Hmm.
is obviously physical, something strength related, strength of body, physique is strength,
Hmm.
and then energy I use for anything that's obviously energy weapons and stuff. I mean, Captain Marvel's pretty obvious,
Yeah.
but then anything that's kind of techie
Hmm.
orientated that uses electricity, I'll make that an energy as well. I don't know why, and then yeah, mental for anything that is of the mind. I think that's a pretty easy one. And I think it's the one that we all sort of use really think about
Yeah.
it. Where they broke that for Hulk obviously because I mean his suborbital leap is his thwart card, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's still a physical because he's still leaping,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would
He's
say
using his
there's
physical.
room there to sort of mix and matches and stuff. All right, so the
Hmm.
continuation of that question is, Rorschach's journal is a wild. Allies
Hmm.
are always wild, so that makes sense. But Rorschach's journal is a wild. When do you decide to make the decision to make it a wild, which then really opens up the possibility of its use?
Hmm. Yeah. Like usually when I turn something into a wild, barring any like specific like reason, if I just like don't have a specific reason, but I'm like, oh, I feel like this should be a wild, that's just to make the card itself a little bit better.
Mm.
And like the reason why I made this one a wild specifically is like you're basically gonna play this every time you see it. It's
Yes.
such a good card.
Right.
So making it a wild at least is an attempt at giving you the decision of like, do I spend it or do I play it? If that makes sense.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, that was kind of it. And then the other is like for Night Owl, he's a wild because I think most allies are wilds, at
I,
least hero allies
I think they all
are
are.
wilds.
All
Just
signature allies are wild. I'm pretty sure. I can't think of anyone that
yeah,
isn't. Yeah.
yeah, and I think the reason they probably did that is like if you're playing with that hero, you obviously can't use the ally, so you want the
You want something
wild.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's exactly why they did it. You're right. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. All right. I'm going to hit you with another one. This is a pretty classic thing for creation, right? And we chatted about this
Mm,
before the actual recording. It's the biggest stumbling block for all creators, I think, is
mm.
cost. So
Oh
you've
yeah.
got Rorschach's journal here. It's a
Mm,
resource generator, what we call a resource generator, because it has exhaust Rorschach's journal and generate a mental resource. It has an extra ability after you pay
mm,
for an event by 2 ready Rorschach's journal, and yet it costs 2. Why 2 and not 3?
mm. So the this is kind of
It sounds like I'm
another
critiquing
really
your cards.
tough...
I'm not critiquing your stuff.
No.
I'm interested in the decisions. Why? That's what.
Yeah. This one is definitely something that should be a 3, 100%.
But why do you say that though? What's wrong with it being a 2?
So I think it should be a 3 because, like, if you compare it to something like what's it called, the Quicksilver Ready and Resource. I forget the name of it, but it's like
Always be running or
exhaust
whatever it's called.
It's his upgrade or
Oh,
something,
yeah, okay,
but
yeah, cool.
yeah. But it exhausts for a physical, and then every time you ready Quicksilver, it readies that card, and it's like a really, really good, like borderline broken
It's insane.
Resource generator.
It's OP as hell. Because you can ready this like 4 times a turn. It's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like this definitely is like comparable. I think the Quicksilver one is definitely better, but it's comparable. And so under that argument, it should be a 3. But I kind of call this the Captain America's shield rule, where like if it's a card that's like so important to that character and it's supposed to be broken, you can make it a little bit broken.
Right.
Like obviously Captain America's shield giving you +1 defense and retaliate for 1 cost is like printed one of the most broken cards in the game.
Right.
But that's fine because it's Captain America's shield and it makes sense that it's broken.
And because he has cards that make you return it to your hand. So
exactly
you are going to have to lose it at some point. Like it's not a permanent card.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, okay. For sure.
So really when it comes right down to it is you need to sort of make a decision, right? So the most common thing is you compare it to an existing card. Right? Mm-hmm. So and that's good. That's probably the easiest way to do it. It's like, what does my card do versus what does this card do, and what did they cost it, and I should cost it relatively the same. But then you do what you just described. So you then sort of have a bit of a think about it. It's like, what exactly is this card in terms of this hero, and what am I hoping to achieve here? I think 2 is perfectly reasonable based on everything you just said. It's not actually as powerful as Quicksilver's card. So it doesn't need to be as costly. In fact, his probably should be 4, not 3. But anyway, So, but there's the sort of the argument that you sort of made. So 2, in terms of Rorschach. I mean, Rorschach's the only person who can use it. So in terms of that, it actually makes perfect sense to cost it what it is. So then right next to it, we've got a 4 cost. I mean, 4 to me, I don't know about you, but I have just a real mental problem with 4 cost cards. They upset me. Right? No pun intended, because it's got to upset the system. But I really, really hate them because they're effectively your entire hand. Like if you get that card and you want to play it, that's basically your hand gone because the general idea is that you have 5 in hero form, right? If you're Hulk, you're screwed. But if it's anybody else, unless you got resource generators, a 4-card card to me has to be magnificently OP before I even consider playing it.
For sure.
So you've got upset the system. What does this card do, and why does it cost 4?
So, like, this costing 4 is definitely a balance decision because almost exactly like into what you were just saying, playing a 4-cost card is usually your entire turn.
Yeah. But
this card specifically, the hero action will allow you to draw a card, multiple cards, most likely. So you basically can like refill your hand off of this card. Wow. So if it was like, lower costed, then you'd end up with more cards than you started with, which often with this card you do end up with that. But so this was definitely a balanced decision to make it that expensive.
So you only get roughly 2 cards back, right? So the cost is down to 2. I mean, the average is 2 boost icons, right? So, but are you ever going to overpay it? Resolve the action 1 X times. Have you ever overpaid? Because that's essentially your entire hand. With unless you've got a resource generator as well, right?
Yep. So that's kind of assuming that you have Rorschach's journal out.
Right.
Then you'll get to do it. So it'll let you investigate and then draw. And this is definitely like, it's not like a early game play. It's like you're at the end of the game. You have Rorschach's journal. You have some other resource generators. So then you dump your hand on this and do a bunch of stuff. And the other reason, too, to touch on his mask,
Yep.
the act of investigating is not just giving you knowledge of what the encounter deck is, but his mask allows you to deal damage whenever you investigate.
Yep.
So now this card becomes look at the cards in the encounter deck, choose which one you want to get rid of, deal some damage, draw some cards. So
I love it.
yeah.
All right. That leads me to the next one then. Quite a common thing that you've got is the concept of setup. All right. So you have sort of a signature thing that you get out of your kit during the setup process. Captain America, the earliest type characters, they just essentially just said, go find that thing and add it to your hand, right? Whereas nowadays it's mainly just you start up and play with it, right? The obvious one is Wolvie, right? So he can't start playing without his claws. So I mean, he has to have it. The argument for why he doesn't have his skeleton is very easy. It's because it's an adamantium skeleton. It's not his actual skeleton. Obviously, he has his skeleton at setup. Otherwise, he'd be dead. So but the claws, that's what he has, right? That's his thing. So I can see on Rorschach, you've got setup to go get his mask, right? And that makes perfect sense because his mask is his entire identity. Now, so did you? So it's a two-part question. His journal is obviously very, very important. Why is that not a setup card? And two, did you make the decision that his mask should be set up based on the character, like knowing the character so well? Because he essentially is nothing without his mask. He doesn't even like having his mask off. Or because of what it does for you.
It was that specific decision was definitely from like a theme standpoint, like you said, like
awesome.
He would never go out without his mask.
Yes.
Like the line, I remember the line from the movie where like he screams at the therapist saying like, "Where's my face?"
Yeah, where's my face?
Like he sees the mask as his face, so that was where that came from.
Brilliant. And the journal setup question?
The journal not being set up, I just think like obviously 2 cards being taken for setup would be a bit much. So like if I had to make the decision between the 2, then the theme is where it came from. I decided on Rorschach's mask.
Awesome. And plus that being a 2-cost card that is also set up would be insane.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Awesome. So theme is obviously very important. It's a delicate balancing act between mechanic. Does the mechanic actually make sense? And is even interesting, right? I mean, you've struck gold with the investigate. Is obviously an interesting thing for certain characters, right? You wouldn't have, Jean Grey doing investigate, but Rorschach, it makes perfect sense, right? So you detective characters, and I look forward to Detective Chimp. So then you've got theme itself, right? So theme dictated part of his mechanic, like his kit, based on theme itself. How much do you marry those two sort of things? I mean, Hax and I have a similar motto. It's theme is everything, and then the mechanic then sort of builds into that. Whereas, are you more mechanic? It must be mechanic is everything, and then sort of theme, or do you sort of balance them?
I feel like the most common way for me to use theme is to like narrow down the scope of what I'm trying to design. And like what I mean by that is like when you start a hero, and I'm sure so many people like can identify with this, when you start a hero, the possibilities are just like so endless of like not only from what can this character do, but like what should I have in this deck to make it like a functioning Marvel Champions hero deck.
Yeah.
Like the general kind of rule is like, oh, give them a few attack cards, give them a few defense cards, give them a few thwart cards. But like, if you go from a theme point of view, you're like, what would this character be doing while they're fighting? Like, what skills and what actions would they be doing and using to fight a villain?
Cool.
So that's kind of where I fall back on theme quite a bit.
Right. Love it. That's the great balance. It's like trying to work it all out. And you're right. So like the general, I mentioned the rainy method before, right? So it's just the hero card, the whatever your signature ally is, and then 2 attack, 2 defense, 2 thwart, some upgrades, a support card that's usually something to do with alter ego, like that sort of stuff, right? And that is essentially the same sort of method I use as well. I'll start with that basic template of what should be in the kit, because it works perfectly, but then theme then jumps in, or some mechanics sort of jumps in. So Mockingbird, for example, recently I gave her far more events than I normally would, because that's what her ability was all about. It's all about events, like dealing with the sort of events and stuff. And you would do similar things with other sort of heroes. Like it's just like, what's the hero that's actually got more than one support, which is unheard of? Like someone's got like they've got like 3 support cards, and it's like it's the first time this has ever happened. I think it's Ms. Marvel, right? And it makes sense because family is what she's all about. And that sort of ties into her theme. Is her family mean everything there is to her? And so there they are. They're represented in the game. Great stuff. We talked enough about Rorschach. Do you want to move on to? Did we miss anything, or do you want to move on to Martian Manhunter?
I think you just perfectly segued into Martian Manhunter and Miss Martian.
Sweet. All right, let's do it.
So, kind of what I was trying to capture with these 2 sets, I made them side by side.
Oh, cool.
Just like, I don't know why I wanted to do that, but I just thought it would be cool to make 2. I think I wanted to do like a Rocket and Groot and make them side by side and make them like almost like symbiotic, and ended up deciding to do this. But the reason why I say you segued perfectly is like the balance between events and upgrades. I tried to, with this set, think about like what is an event from like a mechanical standpoint and what is an upgrade from a mechanical standpoint. And like upgrades, they come out and then you use them when they're useful. Like they're more reliable than something like an event where you just have to draw it and then you have to use it basically that turn. So what I tried to do was with Martian Manhunter, he uses like almost exclusively upgrades.
Okay,
and cool. Miss Martian uses almost exclusively events. And the reason I did that is, again, from a theme standpoint, Martian Manhunter has almost perfect control over his powers and can do whatever he wants when he wants. Whereas Miss Martian is known as being like almost more powerful, but lacks that control. So you're more at the mercy of like which powers did you draw, versus Martian Manhunter, who has a lot of like go find this upgrade and put it into play, and then you can use it when you want it, and all this sort of stuff.
Just a quick aside, I was actually in a game with Ms. Martian. I made a joke. It's like, why does a person who is definitely afraid of fire have a heat vision ability?
Yeah.
Like, is that true? Question. I had to Google it. I was like, does she really have heat vision? And yep, she does. There you go. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, they're definitely like a sort of Superman type, just all the powers you can think of, they have it.
All right, so they were made in sort of conjunction. So you started with one and went to the other, whatever the case may be. And the theme, so the theme of their ability and who they are as a character dictated what sort of how many cards they would have. Because you're right, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh wait, that's the same card. I've stuffed up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow, that's a heap. Love it.
7, yeah.
Yeah,
a lot of upgrades.
7.
And then she conversely has what, 4? Yeah, or so. But yeah, that was like,
that's great.
Trying to come up with that balance of like how many to give was definitely very difficult, but
yeah, I feel you.
Yeah,
and again, it's like like we just joked about. Like they can do basically anything. It's just, I mean, Martian Manhunter is insanely powerful, Like everything that he can take. Although you just throw a match at him and he freaks out. But other than that,
Yeah.
it's it is what it is. Why does Ms. Martian have the? Well, let's talk about this dual mana thingy that we've got. All right, so we'll highlight heat vision for it just because I just love the fact that it exists. All right, so one, what is the dual mana thingy? Mana, the resource, the dual resource thing, and why does Ms. Martian have it, but Martian Manhunter does not?
So I called it a null resource. So, and honestly, from a rules perspective, it's kind of a mess. But you get the idea of it, and that you can just play it how it feels intuitively.
Right.
The rules part of it doesn't really make sense, but basically, it's a resource that you can spend it, but it does nothing. It doesn't actually generate anything. And so, if you then read her alter ego ability, which Martian Manhunter has the exact same ability, they can turn all resources they spend as, or they can treat them all as wild. So using this ability for the round allows you to now turn these null resources into a wild, basically making these all 2 resource generators. So that's what it does. And the reason for it was when I was first designing the 2 of them, I had the idea of giving them identical alter ego abilities. And I thought, like, what would be a cool way to capture, like, their shape-shifting, and because that's kind of what they're known for the most, is the fact that they can, like, shape-shift and do whatever power, really. I thought, like, wild resources, playing with wild resources would be a cool perspective on that. So then for her, I was like, well, what should I do for her side? I came up with, I don't remember how I came up with this, but just do the null resource, give her a couple extra resources. Whereas Martian Manhunter, he gets benefits for playing cards using wild resources. And then he has a lot of requirement cards, which obviously wild is very helpful for. So,
So I thought it lent more into the fact that, like you were saying before, she doesn't have that much control over her powers, or as much as John, at the very least. Right?
Yeah.
So she has these extra, wild. I'm doing air quotes. Wild element to her abilities. Interesting. When you created basically a whole new mechanic, and one that's pretty rare. So it's basically every mechanic is. Every idea has happened before in the the thousands of years that humans have been here. It's like there's nothing new under the sun, is what they say. But you've actually made a new one, which I think is really, really cool, but also kind of dangerous. So how long did it take you? Like, you joked before that it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's kind of janky, but it makes perfect sense to me. I don't know what you mean by that. And how long did it take you to sort of balance this brand new concept?
I mean, that's all just like trial and error. It's like, usually I feel like alter ego abilities are pretty powerful. So it started from there, that like, this is their alter ego ability. It basically turns their cards into double resources for a turn, but it's an alter ego ability, so you had to flip down or started in alter ego to use it. So like, it's hard to say exactly how I arrived at like balancing it specifically. That was honestly probably more like playtesters that helped me out with that.
Okay. Alter ego abilities have to be good because of the annoyance of going to alter ego.
Yes, definitely.
I bloody hate it. Unless it's a hero that wants to, like Natasha. Cool. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about the Martian people?
No, that's about all. I do think it's interesting. You said, like, I created a whole new mechanic for her. First off, I don't know if that's true. I feel like I probably saw it somewhere from somebody else. But
well,
the other thing I wanted to say is I'm usually like I feel like I'm not really known for making like new mechanics,
Right.
and that's almost intentional from like my side. I feel like it's a lot easier and leads to really clean creations if you just take a bunch of different elements from official creations and other like custom creations that are really good and just mash them all together, and
Yep.
that really just makes for the best experience in my experience.
Yep.
But yeah.
But sometimes you need to. Like I would rarely do
Yeah.
it as well because you're right. I would prefer to just use what comes before, mainly because
Hmm.
people are used to it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they don't bother putting the description of keywords on cards anymore because if you don't know by now, there's a problem.
Yeah.
But also, if you
Hmm.
even if you're a new player, it's in the rulebook. Just go have a look at it, right? It just says space on the card and stuff,
Hmm.
so everybody knows what guard does. Um,
Yeah.
but even so I've sort of avoided that sort of thing. But just recently, I created a new keyword called Zealot, and it's it was mainly because of I saw a gap that I thought I could
Mm.
then exploit. So it's through
Yep.
playtesting and just normal everyday playing, right? I noticed that even when a minion has guard, you can get around that sort of with cards like Wiccan, for example, right? Because his
Mm.
ability, the damage that he deals, is not an attack, and so
Yeah.
the poor minion is like, he's like, well, hey, I got employed to guard, and I'm not doing anything because you just this
Yeah.
Wiccan asshole is like throwing damage everywhere. So it's
Yeah.
when he actually works, let's be honest. But it's that's the sort. So I was like, oh, well, here's a gap here, right? How do we stop the sort of the indirect damage, I guess you call it, is onto like the with the non-attack damage, and FFG have come up with an idea themselves with like force fields and stuff, right? They get
Mhm.
the attachment that or like Rhino's impervious skin and stuff. So they saw that right from the very beginning. It's like all the damage that goes to them goes to this card instead for a certain amount, and then you
Mhm.
discard that card, right? So that's really all Zealot is. Zealot is just any damage that gets dealt to the villain that's not attack damage gets dealt to this minion instead because they've kind of like they've jumped in the way of the bullet, so it's Secret Service style,
Mhm.
and then away they go. The damage goes to them, and if it kills them, sort of stuff. So it's nothing. I mean, that's not groundbreaking. Like I didn't change the game by creating that keyword,
Mhm.
but I just saw that there was a spot for it and sort of stuff. And I think they're the better examples of that. It's like there's you don't want to break it too much because then people like then
Yeah.
freak out. Like speaking from experience,
Mhm.
right? I love Hacks to death. I think he's a genius. Um, but there are some heroes that he's made that I will just never play because I'm too
Mhm.
scared to look like an idiot on stream. That's really all it is. I just don't want to look like an idiot. Where I'm trying to figure it out, like what it is, like the complexity. Which is why I love the fact that he has like a complexity thing, a complexity rating, because it's like, well, if it's 3 or higher, forget about it. I'm scrolling past.
Yeah.
And that's just my sort of thing. And again, it's because he really bends the concept of how the game is meant to work,
Mhm.
which I can't do. I just can't do that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I'm more of like a simple both player and creator. Like I don't like the overly complex stuff as much.
Hmm.
Um, but like you, I have a great appreciation for those who can pull it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I more just think like, the game is designed in a certain way for certain reasons. You need to have really good excuses for breaking those reasons.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's
Hopefully,
kind of my
better
yeah.
reasons than they do themselves.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I'm looking at you, Retaliate.
Yeah,
It's
I've been
ridiculous.
following that. That's been a mess.
All right, well, let's look at one of my favorite custom scenarios. I'm so glad you chose this one. I didn't determine which ones he chose. This is all him. Um, I freaking love this scenario. Just freaking love it. All right, so we touched about it at the start. So like the difference between creating a hero versus creating a scenario. And I don't think actually you even really gave an answer. It's just, what do you think is actually easier, the hero or the scenario?
I would definitely say hero, but like I would put like a small asterisk next to that just because like I think and what I was going to touch on with Doomsday is I think a lot of people forget that they're specifically referred to as scenarios and not villains or boss battles
Yes,
for a reason.
exactly.
And that's because it's a scenario of like a villain is trying to accomplish something and you're trying to stop them.
Yep, perfect.
So it's not just usually it's not just like, hey, Doomsday walked up and you have to beat him up.
Yep.
Like that's kind of what this is because he's Doomsday and that wouldn't make sense for him to be robbing a bank or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, so I think if you can nail down both the villain you want to use and the scenario, like from a theme standpoint, that really helps you guide creating the whole scenario and the modular sets and stuff like that. So it makes it a lot easier. Whereas a hero we talked about earlier, like trying to compress some of these heroes into 15 cards is a really difficult thing sometimes.
Yep. It's definitely a balancing act for sure. Scenarios though, I really love what you just said. It's not a boss battle. This is although some of them are, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I'm totally cool with it. I mean, Doomsday is a boss battle essentially, but it's
Yep, sure.
it's and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I love Doomsday. Whereas I mean, it's important to note, like the Rhino scenario, for example, it's he's not looking for a fight. He's trying to rob something, right?
Yeah.
And it's probably to give it to his daughter, who he loves. So it's not specifically stated, but that's probably what he's doing it for. So that's it, right? I mean, you're just there to stop him doing what he's doing. He only just gets aggro and attacks you because you're getting in his way. And I think they sort of carried those sort of things over from the previous sort of like the grandparents of this game, so Lord of the Rings and
Yeah.
Arkham, where it's
Yep.
less so Arkham because Arkham is pure story.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
great old ones don't give a crap about you. You mean
Yeah.
nothing. Right? So you're insignificant. But whereas in comics, I mean, you've got to have the battle. That's what everybody. That's what you're reading the comic for, right? It's the big battle. It's either the villain battle or it's the heroes that have a battle because they've of some sort of misunderstanding and then they're friends forever by the end of it. It's the classic comic thing. Where were we there? So for this, yeah. So you created your own modules as well. I want to highlight as well because I think modules, funnily enough for me, modules are kind of an afterthought. Really, I mean the modules only really exist because I don't have an official module I can use that'll work. When possible, I prefer to use the original ones. But if they don't quite fit the theme, I'll create one. I'd rather avoid it if I can. So I've got all the cards set out. Let's talk about Doomsday from go to woe. So design process, idea, mechanic, and we really need to touch on balancing. How much threat do you apply? Why did you apply it? Why is there only 2 stages instead of 3 or only 1? That sort of stuff. Right, deep dive.
So starting with Doomsday, and I think we might have talked a little bit about this last time, but like he definitely was like I started with making the villain card and like what needs to be on a villain card for you to see it and be like, oh shit. So
yep.
I wanted like all the keywords like printed steady, printed toughness, printed overkill, phase 3 attack in stage 1.
Yep.
Just a lot of scary stuff. 20 hit points in stage 1.
Yeah.
I just wanted him to be terrifying to look at.
Yep.
And then things go from there. The scenarios, or not the scenarios, the main schemes. That was kind of like we were talking about. Like he's basically a boss battle, but also there is something like you can make a scenario out of it, and the scenario was basically the Death of Superman scenario of like he shows up, no one knows what this creature is, and he starts trying to kill Superman and wreck Metropolis. So I don't know, like I probably didn't know from the beginning like, oh, I need 2 stages of the main scheme, but like that just kind of becomes like a logical or like thematic like change or like oh shit moment of like he's done enough damage to the city, now we're in like the end game of like I don't know, things just got real. I don't know.
Things
But yeah.
got real. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I
yeah.
recently got some really good advice from Phyrexian in terms of threat, and sort of
Mm,
building threat, and not just building threat as in, initial and sort of continuing threat, more the threat of the scenario, like what exactly has happened, right? Um, so why 3 to start off with when
mhm,
he's first arrived and nobody really knows what he's capable of versus
mhm.
the 1 when he's already trashed most of the city and even Soups looks like he's in a bit of trouble.
Yeah. So that's my kind of idea there was at the point of the heroes arriving on the scene,
Mm.
he has now, like, let's say, trashed like a street block or something.
Yep.
And so you show up, and it's not just like, oh, we're onto this trail of like, we heard there's a monster wandering around the woods. It's like, oh no, you show up and this city block is on fire,
Yep.
and there's people screaming and all these things. So
Awesome.
that was like, you initially arrive on the scene and there is stuff to be done.
Love it.
So yeah. And
Okay, cool.
then the reason this is 1 instead of 3 or some other higher number
Hmm.
is there's well, this has been changed, but it used to be there was a when revealed here that would add threat, but yeah, it's more like I didn't want to dogpile you for failing this first scheme, having to do this bad when revealed, and then flip this, and now there's a bunch of threat there. So that's definitely like a
So it's a
balanced
balance
perspective.
thing. Yeah, okay. And do you follow a certain formula to what the threat should be, starting threat and then continuing threat? Is there a formula that you follow, or do you think there's actually an official formula?
Um, I don't really have like a formula per se. I generally like the only thing I have to go off of is 90% of the scenarios in the game go up by 1 per player.
Yeah.
And the only ones that don't, to my recollection, are like the Guardians of the Galaxy, like the Galaxy's Most Wanted box.
Yeah.
Those guys, they all go up by 2, and I just remember hating that.
Well, it's the one
That
everybody.
like,
It's the one everybody hates.
yeah, like it's a great challenge, but like it makes it feel like you're never ever getting a moment to relax.
Yeah.
Like it's just
I think their
constantly.
justification for that is because the Milano can remove threat, but
Yeah,
but
yeah, for sure.
so like
Yeah, it
it's
just
just
feel like from just a purely like not balanced or not mechanical or not thematical. It just feels bad when you're just like constantly struggling against this threat.
right. Okay.
But yeah,
And Duze
so I
is
usually.
a sort of exception to the rule, really, right? Because, like you said, right from the start, you wanted that oh shit moment, like right from the very
Mhm.
beginning. Because I mean, the
Yep.
traditional is 1, 2, 3 is the escalation. Right? I love how by 3 he's just not even speaking English anymore. It's just like, it's which I think is great. But um, well, the original Doomsday couldn't actually talk, could he? Could original Doomsday talk? I don't think he
I
could.
don't
I
remember. I
think he
think
could talk until you
he's
evolved.
changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, uh, anyway, I digress. I'm going into comic book mode, but I love that, right? So theme sort of dictated changing the rules because traditionally it would be something like 10 or 12 or something for one, and
Hmm.
then it roughly it goes up 3 per stage, roughly,
Yep.
right? There are exceptions to the rule, of course, but that's generally
Hmm.
how it goes, right? But of course, when you've got things that don't fit, I mean, this is not Claw we're talking about here, right? Like Claw, I think
Hmm.
is like what 10 or 12 stage one, right?
Yeah.
And then roughly 3 by it. But this is not Claw. This is bloody Doomsday,
Yeah.
right? So it
Yeah.
makes sense. I also noticed that you jump dramatically from 2 to 3, so it's up by
Hmm.
4 and then up by 6. Is that really to
Yeah.
ramp home well,
Hmm.
this dude is just killed Superman? Like you don't stand a chance, but so sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I definitely started with comparing him to Thanos, like his numbers.
Perfect.
And I think everyone can see why they're like, similar physique and like power. But I wanted him because Thanos, like that fight, that scenario, isn't just a like beat 'em up. It's more of like managing the Infinity Gauntlet and like the cool like snap mechanic and
That
stuff like
mechanic
that.
is
But
cool.
whereas,
So you
yeah,
like
it's
the
really cool.
lose half your deck business?
Yeah, I
I
remember
like
me
it
and
too. It makes perfect sense.
yeah, yeah, me and all my friends when we played that for the first time and flipped that scheme, we all just were like, "Oh, that's cool." But yeah,
I don't know why people don't like it. It's like, what are you talking about? That's exactly what he does. It's no, it's
yeah.
great. I love
I mean,
it.
it's basically like you lose at that point, depending on what you lost from your deck. But for like style points, they definitely win there.
It
But
works.
yeah,
That's sort of that. I think
uh,
will lead into a question coming up after you finish saying what you're saying. It's just that sort of stuff. Yeah, I want to touch on that. Yeah, keep saying what we're saying, and we'll jump back.
mm. Well, I was just gonna say like so I compared him to Thanos and then kind of bumped those numbers up a little bit.
Hmm.
Not only because like not just to make like him more difficult than Thanos because I don't necessarily think that's true, but
Well, he
just
does that.
like
He does that
Thanos had a
stalwart
bit.
at the very least.
Yeah, true.
Hmm.
And that was another design decision that we can talk on later. That was a specific reason for that. But he's more of like a regular boss battle than Thanos is what I was trying to get at.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh well, let's touch on that. Certain. So let's have a look at him, right? So straight away, stage one, he's steady toughness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why steady and not stalwart? I mean, I think I know why. Why toughness? Why does it take like? Why the decision to make? Why does he not have, for example, retaliate because of all his bone spikes?
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
So toughness is pretty obvious. Like
Yep.
most big burly villains come out with toughness, and that was probably where it began and ended. I was like, yeah, it's Doomsday. He's got toughness.
Yep. Fair.
But for steady, like first off, I hate stalwart. I really just don't like stalwart
It makes no
because
sense.
it just shuts off like so
Yep.
many cards in the
Yeah,
game
it's the worst.
that I really don't enjoy that mechanic. So the reason for steady was partly because I hate stalwart. The other reason was where is it? The card up here, the Bred for Destruction.
Yep.
I thought that was kind of a cool idea that like if you're trying to stun and confuse him but not successfully yet,
Yeah.
and he has that card or whatever, like
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love.
So and
I
then
absolutely
that was
adore
this.
this card. This is essentially his evolution. Like
Yeah.
he can't play the same trick twice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
And then that was where this came from. Is like I just said I hate stalwart, but I gave him stalwart here, and that's for the specific reason
Right? What is
of
defend yourself,
like,
sir, because I don't agree.
Yep, I will try. That was the idea of like if he has Bred for Destruction on him, and then let's say you're like partially stunning him, partially confusing him or something, and you're like, oh, next turn I'll be able to fully stun him. And then he pulls this card and he gains Stalwart. So now you have to remove the the stuns and confuses, and it triggers this card, and yeah. So that was why.
I don't like it.
But it goes away quick. All you have to do is hit him, and then it goes away.
The retaliate one makes perfect sense, which is why I already knew that. That's why I just to give you a bit of insight on how I pull back the curtain a bit. I knew that card existed, and that's why he doesn't retaliate. Yeah. So no, great, awesome, love it. Makes perfect sense. I absolutely, I can love this so much. It's great. So, and that I think is sort of agree. Stalwart is dumb, right? It's just the fact that you're saying that they can't be stunned and confused. When everybody makes that argument, I just immediately think of the scene in the Avengers movie where Thanos is finally realized what Red Skull is saying and that Gamora has to die, right? He looks completely confused, right? He's just like he actually looks quite stunned, right? With magnificent performance, but from Josh Brolin there, but he can be confused. And to say that something can't be stunned or confused just irritates the crap out of me. Because if you've got a thinking brain, you can be stunned or confused. It's as simple as that. So it just irritates me. So steady makes much more sense. It's harder to do it. Great, but that makes perfect sense. Okay, cool, awesome. All right. Oh, now I forgot my question. Oh, I should have written it down.
Well, so and I'll defend myself a little bit more.
I still love you, Beretta. It's fine. It's still one of my favorite scenarios. Go defend yourself.
I should have specified that I hate printed stalwart. I
Oh,
think
I see.
stalwart applied in certain situations
Yeah.
where it's reasonable can
Right.
be fine. But for like Thanos, for example, printed stalwart, now you can't play Miles Morales against Thanos.
Yeah.
You can't play somebody that focuses on stuns and confuses. You can't take any of those cards.
Yeah.
So like I just don't like it from that perspective where like it literally shuts down like so many different cards and play styles that's the reason I don't like that. But when you apply it in certain situations
Okay, that makes sense. I'm willing to go with that. That's good. That's fine. That's good. Printed still it sucks. We'll put a
yeah.
little asterisk at the end of it. I still can't remember my segue question. Oh man. But I guess it sort of again sort of goes into sort of the balance, right? Like just why does he not have retaliate printed on his actual hero card and he relied on an upgrade to do it, like an attachment? Sorry, the villain version of it. Oh god, I hate that so much. The fact that you can't have attachments for heroes
Yeah.
irritates me. No end. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So yeah, why that?
That might have just been from like a mechanic standpoint of like I thought it would be cool for him to like grow spikes and get retaliate and like stackable retaliate
Yeah,
because that's not really seen a whole lot.
right.
Like retaliate more than one is very rare.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
think there's only one.
and
Isn't MODOK the only one that has retaliate too? Oh, maybe Nebula. I think.
I think there's like a nemesis or two,
Okay.
but yeah, it's very very rare. Um, and so that was kind of my idea was like each specific like spike he grows is now like a new point of retaliate. I don't know, but yeah. So that was why he didn't start retaliate, and like that's just to have that printed is kind of counterintuitive to what you're supposed to do, and
Yes.
like you're already gonna be taking a lot of damage
Yeah.
from him hitting you.
Yep.
You don't really need to be taking a whole lot of damage for hitting him.
Right.
So yeah, that
Right.
was kind of where that came.
Cool. Um, the module. You've got a ally as part of it. You've got your ally Superman, which makes perfect sense, right? Which is great. And he does his stuff. Although you've changed his healing, right?
Yeah.
This is not the new version of the healing, is it? This is the old version.
So that's like the new version, but not the newest version.
Right. Why did you nerf his
It's
healing?
supposed to be.
Now you're like exhaust or something.
Oh, yeah. He now you have to spend 2 and exhaust him to heal him, kind of like a pseudo recover. But I'll say that's not like the final version of the new change. That's like me trying to workshop some new changes because that was some of the feedback I actually got from the seal process was that Superman was a bit too powerful. You could heal him too easily, and he just was never in danger. So I was trying to alter that a little bit.
Well, in the game that I played, he was he was almost dead. I mean, he's actually got a defense, which is pretty unusual. I mean, his allies don't have
Yep.
defense, which is great. So I think it was fine the way it was. But anyway, that's my favorite. And then you've got this environment kryptonite card, which is very cool. A lot of people use the environment. What I've noticed is they use the environment in order to add an extra mechanic that in some cases, and I'm talking official stuff as well, I just don't think is really necessary. You know, it's just an extra thing that you need to worry about. But it seems to have been added because it thematically makes sense. Right? So I think it's one of those rare occasions for me when theme has trumped mechanic and has kind of affected gameplay, right? I don't feel that way about Kryptonite. I just want to point that out. But how important is the decision to add like something like that sort of to the scenario in your mind? Why did you add Kryptonite?
So that was pretty much purely like balance. Like if I'm giving you in the scenario for free a 20 hit point ally that has 3 attack and 3 defend and can be healed and all that good stuff,
Mm-hmm.
there needs to be something, some attempt to rein that in and like give it some sort of downside. So like it's supposed to be like from the setup here on the first scheme, it's like if somebody is playing Superman, then you don't add the kryptonite. But if you don't play Superman and get this ally, then you also have to add the kryptonite in, on top of that.
So why add the card instead of just changing how Superman works?
That's like that's more of we were just saying like it was mechanical and like balance, but this is definitely from theme. Like I'm not gonna nerf Superman
Perfect.
to like account for kryptonite
Yeah.
or whatever. Like I want it, and this was purely like for me. Maybe it's like some OCD or something, but I wanted him to have the same hit point value and attack and defend values as my official Superman
Gotcha.
for continuity reasons.
Yes.
So yeah, that was kind of why.
And he's Superman, bloody hell. He should be
Yeah,
320. It makes perfect sense.
exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great. Love it. All right, cool. Awesome. All right, so the modular. What was your idea for the modular? It's called Metropolis. Is why this and what is it? Oh, I've done it again. Okay, and can you look through this design process? I really specifically want to talk about Endangered Citizen, but you go.
So the this modular specifically, I think, kind of touches on a very, very like untapped well of awesome modulars that is yet to be used,
Mm-hmm.
and that is like using a modular to represent a location that you're fighting at.
Cool.
And I think the reason why this isn't touched on as much is because like in Marvel Comics, specific locations and cities aren't as important as DC, where like it's all fictional cities and like every city like, oh, that's Metropolis, it has this, this, and this in it.
Yep.
Oh, that's Gotham, it has this, this, and this in it. And like those cities have like personalities of their own. And I really like the idea of like a modular being like, oh, we're fighting Joker, but he's attacking Metropolis, so let's add the Metropolis environment.
Awesome.
Or modular.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's
So that was where
really
that
taking advantage of the concept that the modulars can be swapped between scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That was why they were made that way, I think. So I wanted to kind of lean into that.
That's cool. Love it. All right. Endangered Citizen, Companion, Fragile Surge. Let's highlight it. No thwart, no attack, 1 hit point. Put them in play under your control. When an enemy attacks you, it attacks this ally instead. After that attack, if this ally is still in play, discard it and draw 1 card. What was the design process behind this card? Plus, awesome artwork. Gary Frank, legend.
This one was at the time there was no such thing as an ally in environment or not environment in modular, not even modular. What am I trying to say? Encounter sets in the encounter deck.
Yep.
There was no allies that could like get revealed.
Yep.
So I thought that would be kind of cool. And then the idea of like having to protect a citizen, I was like, at first I had the idea of like, oh, it'll be a minion, but then write somewhere on it that like it doesn't actually attack you and act like a minion. But then I just thought, why not just make it an ally? And now that's super intuitive that it's something you need to protect instead of defeat.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was where that came from. And then the companion, to be totally honest, I don't remember exactly what that means. I think it doesn't count towards your ally limit.
Yeah, it doesn't add to your ally limit. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That one I just pulled from the repo of other keywords, so
yeah.
That was that. Because I didn't want you to pull this from the encounter deck and be like, oh, I have to discard an ally now. And then you could also just choose to discard Endangered Citizen, and that would kind of defeat the purpose of it. So
right.
that, and then Fragile is attacks against this ally gain overkill.
Yeah.
That was It's obviously a little bit redundant because Doomsday has printed Overkill, but you know it's a modular, so it could be used on other people as well.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, you have to make it. You have to make it able to be able to use in other encounters and still make sense. So yeah,
Yep.
that's fine. Perfectly fine. Okay, and
Um,
thinking of that is because they're mere mortal flesh that the attacks just go
yeah,
straight through.
yeah, and I didn't want it to be like, oh, I'm so relieved that I just pulled an endangered citizen because now the villain is gonna destroy them and not hit me at all.
That's
So,
great. That is so cool.
you know,
That's actually my favorite part about it. Is that's the
hmm
part I love the most. Is that the concept of the ally chump blocking. I mean, one is the fact
yeah,
that you get
exactly.
the fact that you get an ally in the encounter deck. I think is genius because the encounter deck is not meant to just be what the villain is doing and their
Hmm.
plan. That's mainly covered by the scenario, right? So
Yeah,
the main scheme, right? The encounter
yeah.
deck should be everything that's happening in this
Hmm.
situation, and you
Yep.
endangered citizens is exactly that, right? I mean, it's
Mm.
whenever you're having one of these boss battles, for the most part, sometimes some scenarios wouldn't work. Like you wouldn't do it for Magneto's Asteroid M scenario, right? Because
Yeah.
there's no humans there, right? So, but for the most part, though, yeah, there's going to be people in the way that need to be saved because that's what you're meant to do. So, and the fact that you then don't then just abuse the chump block system, it's just like, oh well, I'm just going to
Yeah.
throw any data centers. Superman would never do that, right? It's just
Yeah.
he would go out of his way to not do that. He'll take the damage if it means he can save you.
Yep.
That just that pure concept alone, I think, is one of the best things you've ever done.
Thank you. Yeah, that actually was like it's another one of those ideas that I don't think a lot of people touch on,
Hmm.
which I think is very underutilized. Is like playing into the like hero
Hmm.
side of things,
Yes.
like the what was the modular, the down to earth modular that came in
Yeah, yeah, where he's
Sinister.
just helping people cross the road and stuff.
Yeah, I really liked that.
Yeah.
Just thought it was cool and like because you know there's two sides to the whole game. It's hero form and alter ego form, so
Hmm.
you know it's kind of cool to touch on that a bit more.
But why Surge? Why
Uh,
Surge? I hate
Surge,
Surge so
just
much.
yeah, Surge definitely like, and to all aspiring like creators out there, a lot of people think that you just throw Surge on a card that's supposed to be a mean card, but Surge is supposed to be used, in my opinion, and frankly, from what I can tell, the designers' opinions, barring Galaxy's Most Wanted, where they just threw Surge on everything.
Oh my god,
Um,
every card's got Surge on it. It's just madness.
Surge is supposed to be used on cards that aren't initially bad. Like, if you pull this on your encounter card for the villain phase, nothing happened to you.
Hmm.
Like, not your encounter card was nothing. So to account for that, you get this card, which you're gonna have to deal with later, but you also get a surge, which means something else will happen. So that's kind of
Ah,
how
so
I
you've
use
done it. So
it.
you've done it more in the sake of sort of net value. It's just the encounter card's meant to represent bad things, and you just
Yeah.
got something that is inherently good, and so therefore you
Well,
had to be
like,
punished. It's a bad
yeah,
thing.
not necessarily that it's like good. It's just this card, pulling this card is not, it doesn't cause anything bad to happen at the moment that you reveal it, if that makes sense.
Okay, all right. I'll accept that. Let's move on. I accept. I hate Surge so much. Surge is the laziest mechanic this game has. It's just, and you're right. People just put it on far too
Yeah,
often.
it's definitely
Yeah, it's
overutilized.
way
Yeah.
overused. Yeah. Moving on. I still can't remember the question. So I'm telling you, it was going to be brilliant, that question, but now it's just completely gone out from my brain. Let's talk about the. There's one thing that I sort of struggle with is the amount of cards to put in the encounter deck, and then using. I've got to stop doing two-part questions because then I forget the second question. And these bad boys,
Uh-huh.
the hazard things. has an
Oh yeah.
amplified acceleration, right? So one, the size of the encounter deck. You have to incorporate the fact that you're going to have modules as well, right? How many modules
Yeah.
do you add? How big should the encounter deck be? Is it theme orientated? Is it play orientated? Go.
That one's like probably the most difficult question you've asked so far, in my opinion. Like that's a really hard thing to like just be like, oh, this scenario will have this many cards. Like
The
that's
most difficult question I've asked you so far is why did you put bloody Surge on this card? That's
yeah,
because there's no justification for it. No, I'm joking. No.
yeah. It was an easy question. You just didn't like the answer.
That's so true. You're a smart man.
But yeah, so I don't really have that down to a science of like how many cards I put in, but again, just referencing like official scenarios, the fact that like you want to give every play style a little something to play with, and I say that as I'm about to reveal that I completely shut down an entire play style in this scenario. But that you want to give every deck like something to do. So like you give a few side schemes, you give a few attachments, you give a few minions and whatnot, and that's where I reveal that I gave no minions in this entire scenario.
No, there's no minion. Well, there's not meant to be, right? Because then theme
Yeah.
sort of trumps that, right? I mean, and I've heard that before. The whole you have to give everybody something to do, right? I get that, but sometimes that just doesn't work. Like there's just I'm not going to throw in an arbitrary side scheme just so the Justice player can do something. If that's all they're doing, then I don't think they're playing their character right. The Justice players shouldn't just be thwarting. You have to do other stuff, in my opinion. So I just most of the time I actually kind of ignore that rule. It's just I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. Like each hero, in my mind, the well designed ones are the ones that can do multiple themes, not just one thing brilliantly. They should be able to take care of anything to sort of support their teammates, right? And especially if you're playing solo, because you have to be able to do everything, right? So anyway.
But yeah, I agree with that. But like where I try to kind of give most play styles a little something is like there's a lot of cool cards in this game. There's a lot of cool aspect cards and a lot of cool hero cards, and like a lot of them will interact with side schemes and a lot of them interact with minions and stuff like that. So by not including those cards, you kind of break portions of the game a little bit.
Yeah,
like
true.
it just kind of locks out like every card that references a minion, for example. You can't really use in this scenario.
Yeah.
And I say that, but then I'll try to justify the fact that I just did that. And that's like you were saying, sometimes theme does triumph a little bit.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make logical sense for you to worry about anybody else but Doomsday if you're fighting Doomsday.
Yeah, so the aggression players have still got something to do. They've got Doomsday.
Yeah.
He's got 20 hit points. That. So, I mean, they've got something. And theme dictates that he doesn't have any companions. Like, it just makes perfect sense. But there are exceptions to the rule. I mean, some of the best scenarios sort of try to balance that out as much as possible. Although, that being said, my favourite scenario, Sinister Six, doesn't have any minions? Oh, well, it has them as the minions, doesn't it? No.
Yeah, I think so.
Do they exist as minions?
I haven't played that one.
I think because you add them as a modular, you then get them as minions. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
But the scenario as itself doesn't really have any because you're really concentrating on them. Anyway, but yeah, no, it is an exception. It is an exception, but yeah, sometimes you gotta try and balance it out. I get that, but I'm too stubborn.
And yeah, well, I'm way too stubborn on this one too. That was by far the most feedback I got from the seal process was add minions, and I will not do that.
You are joking. Someone in the seal process actually said to you need to add minions to a Doomsday scenario.
That was, I think, literally every review. Not like necessarily that they were like crashing on it for that reason, but just like, oh, our aggression player had nothing to do. And that was kind of, that leans into another kind of design space for a scenario.
Yes.
Not, in my opinion, not every scenario is designed to be played the same way. And what I mean by that is, like, you shouldn't be able to take like a Captain America leadership deck and plug it into every single scenario and win. Like, there
really?
should be a scenario, yeah. Like, and I think that just adds to like making the game more interesting. Is like there should be some scenarios that test you and make you play a certain way. And
Right.
speaking of that, I know
That's kind of
ES
different.
had,
That's
like,
kind of different to what you just said, though. So you're, in your opinion, you shouldn't be able to take one
Mhm.
hero and one deck, not make any changes, and go through all the scenarios.
I don't think so. And like from what you were just saying, like that kind of contradicts the adding like a little bit of minions and a little bit of side schemes so that everyone can do things.
Hmm.
That's more like to be fair, that is a contradiction, but it just kind of has to, you have to break your own rules sometimes, I guess. I
Yes.
don't know.
Isn't that
Like,
isn't that the design golden rule?
yeah,
That
like,
sometimes you just have to break the rules.
yeah. And that's why it's design and it's creative and it's not a science that you can just like give a formula for that.
Yeah.
Like, even though I just gave you a rule, or I broke it and did something else. Like, yeah.
Because the reason I say
So,
this is because progression play is quite popular, especially for people like Lord of
mhm.
the Rings, right? The Lord of the Rings LCG.
Yeah.
There's can't count how many YouTube videos there are of people attempting the progression style. You know, there's the same three heroes, the same three decks, and then you
Mm,
just try and go through as much as you possibly can, and it's not impossible. It's ridiculous, but
mhm.
people enjoy doing that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it has value, but I also think as a
Yeah.
designer, you shouldn't design your scenario purely because people might want to do that.
Yeah.
Which is what I think the modular system is so genius. The modular system is what makes
Hmm.
this is the
Yeah.
scenario has its set purpose. I mean, Doomsday is
Hmm.
here and he's going to kick your ass. I mean, that's all we really
Yep.
need to know. Now, how easier or more difficult you can make that depends on your scenario. Like if you don't put Metropolis in, although do you have to have Metropolis? Oh no, under
I
attack,
think
right?
Metropolis
Yeah, so
is,
Metropolis is
yeah.
meant to be there. But if you don't have under attack, for example, right? Which makes sense because under
Hmm.
attack's got like Ultron crap in it. And you don't want to break the
Hmm.
theme, right? Okay, cool. Let's chuck in the Masters of Evil. Right?
Yeah.
There's your
Exactly.
minions, and they all
Yep.
suck. Right? So good luck now.
Yeah.
Now that you're dealing with radioactive man, and Doomsday is still going to kick your butt. You know, it's like,
Yep.
right, boy, you can make it a little bit easier, and yeah, chuck in, that one that we mentioned before, like downtime or whatever it is. It's
Hmm.
it's the modular system is a brilliant concept, and it's awesome.
Yeah. It really is.
And unfortunately, the flip side is that it makes scenarios harder, makes it harder to design them
Yeah.
because then you're like, well,
Yeah.
what
True.
if they use this modular? Well,
Yep.
it's their own fault for choosing it. You know, it's
Yeah. Exactly. That's the answer. It's their own damn fault for doing that.
cool. All right, so we didn't really touch on numbers. So is numbers sort of determined on what it is that you're trying to achieve? And so that's sort of just generally, like for example, I mean, you've got 3 bone spikes, right? Just because you thought that would be funny to have 3 instances of retaliate one, right? But you've only got
Yeah.
2 pre-rages. You've only got 2 unfazed. You've got 2 of Brinby Superman, which is awesome. I love that picture. Poor booster. Only one of program hatred. Like what? Go through that sort of stuff, please.
So that's like, it's a lot of feel and a lot of balancing and testing. Like, I think something that should really be mentioned is like, despite me sounding like I like was able to come up with this stuff by like just thinking it out and being like, oh, Doomsday will do this, Doomsday will do that. Like, this is far from the first version of Doomsday.
Right.
Like, it's a lot of, oh, this is the idea, you play test it and it changes. So like, I don't know for a fact, but let's say my first version had 4 unfazed
Yep.
treacheries, and then I just kept pulling that card and was really annoyed by it and was like, okay, this card, there's too many of them, so I'm going to take 2 out.
Well, you would be because it's got Surge on it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
Sorry, I'm just messing.
that's yeah, that's kind of where that comes from. Is like just feel and testing and stuff like that. Those aren't, you can't really just like figure that out. The only maybe exception to that is like almost every scenario has two copies of a card that makes the villain activate against you.
Right.
So that's where pure rage comes from.
Gotcha.
But aside from that, like you kind of just have to test it and get a feel for it.
Well, I just remembered my brilliant question. You just reminded me of my brilliant question is how much does playtesting then dictate the final product?
I think playtesting is like all that dictates the final product.
Cool. Yep.
So, and that's coming from me who doesn't do a lot of playtesting, but
Right.
like I just like coming up with the ideas and stuff, and then I like hearing what other people get out of it, and that's where you get the best playtesting.
Yes.
Because, for example, with I think Doomsday is a really good example of that. If I was to playtest Doomsday when I first created him, I would show up with a Captain America with protection
Yeah.
and just do nothing but these crazy defend cards and be fine.
Yeah.
Whereas like someone else might go in and be like, "Oh, I really want to try my leadership deck, ally spam," and then they get their ass kicked because Doomsday has printed overkill.
Yeah.
Whereas like I would never try that, but like maybe somebody just really likes leadership and they're like, "I want to try to beat Doomsday with leadership." So, you know, they're going to play the scenario in ways that you didn't intend, and that's really important for figuring out balance.
Playtesting is vital. It's just
Yeah.
absolutely vital. No one, I don't care who you are. I mean, we've heaped praise on multiple creators in this series. It's like, but no, it doesn't matter who you are. You're not going to make the perfect product on the very first go. It's just you need tweaking, and you need to people that sort of think a bit outside the box and like come up with these wacky ideas. And I remember for one of mine, one was Kami tested it using a pure basic deck. So no aspect, just basic, which I actually don't think is even technically allowed. But then of course did just unbelievable numbers. It's like I was doing like 25 a go, you know, stuff like that. And it's like, well, I would never have thought of that, and two, now what do I do? Like where am I at this point, right? It's just, and you're right. They do things. Some people are stubborn and like, oh, I'm gonna a leadership deck makes no sense, but I'm gonna do it. God damn it! And then they work out a way. It's like they've got their card pool, they put it all together, and it's like boom, victory! I got a leadership deck. I did it. I just threw enough chumps at him, and that wore him down. You know, whatever. And that's essentially what happens in the story. So play testing for me, and the flip side of that is, just people who take the time to do it. There are people that do it just for the fun of it. It's like you just hear, it's like, oh, I played your blah 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 scenario or your hero, and I had a lot of fun. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that just made my day.
Those are the real heroes.
Yeah, they're legends. But also the people that we have in the community that then do it to have like a critical eye, to sort of just try and break it and sort of help you out in that way. I mean, people like Bubblegum and Nashman, for example, right? It's just that sort of give you think about things that you would never have thought about. And then sort of try and break or fix or correct and sort of stuff like that, and then go out of their way to then give you feedback. Like that's the sort of stuff that I love. It's just because I just don't have the patience or even the care to do that sort of thing. Like I make it, and I'm like you. I make it. Cash once said to me, "He's like, you're so creative. How do you come up with all these things all the time?" It's because I don't play test anything, Cash. So I make it. And I move on. I've moved on to the next thing. By the time that thing's already ready for PlayStation and possible seal and all that sort of crap, I'm already 3 projects down the line. And that's just not the way to do it. Like I'm going to self-criticize myself. You can't do that. You need to play test it properly in order to then get the product that people are actually going to play. Otherwise, they're just not going to play it. And then what's the point of making the stuff anyway?
Yep. And I'm totally the same way as you. And so that's where I have to give all the credit to the people who playtest a lot of my stuff. Like I would be nowhere near these designs would be nowhere near the point they're at if it weren't for Beryl and Gold and Haynes, McBobber, Kogahan, so many people that give me like frequent testing, they're invaluable. So yeah, that cannot be understated.
Awesome. Do you have anything else you want to talk about this, or we're going to move on to the next thing I'm very excited about?
I think that's all.
All right, let's clear the area. Unintended. One of the best cards in the game. All right, so another aspect of creation is collaboration. All right, so if you are lucky enough to be friendly enough with somebody on the server that that has a similar idea to you, or it wants to help you with your idea, or whatever the case may be, we have quite often we have some collabs, right? And we've gotten some really really cool out of those things. So I'm going to go over here. I snuck it over here so nobody would see it until the big reveal. So you're currently working on a project with Man 3. I refuse to call him Manny. It's Man 3. At the moment that you wanted to show off. So here we go. The big reveal.
Yeah. Yeah, so me and him are working on a War Machine hero. This was an idea that I had a long time ago and was too lazy to find art for. And then I actually watched your creator spotlight on Man 3 and saw a lot of his stuff and like saw that he was collaborating with people and instantly reached out to him on Discord and was like, "Hey, if you ever want to collaborate, your stuff's awesome, so let me know." And he was like, "Yeah, just let me know what I want to do." He really just said like, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Oh, I have a War Machine." He was like, "Yeah, that sounds cool."
That's
So
awesome.
I literally just gave him like a spreadsheet of the cards, and he did 100% of the design. And like these cards are like phenomenal. I could never make something looking as good as this. Like all these overlays and
Yeah. He's an artistic master. I love him so much.
He really is.
He's helping me with my Hydra thing, my Hydra campaign, and it's just it's just amazing work, just unbelievable. So the collab here, that is awesome. So you watched the spotlight, you reached out to him, boom, you got yourself a collab. So the mechanics are yours, but the card design is his. Is that how it worked?
It's like the mechanics are like maybe 80%, 90% mine, and like he had some input and helped me like kind of work out some ideas, and the card design is 100% him.
Wow.
So he definitely helped with some mechanics, but I did not help with the art.
So he helped tighten up the mechanics, and then with the art,
Yes.
he was just like, "Here, it's all yours, dude. Enjoy."
Yep, definitely. Yeah,
that's amazing.
So he was awesome. I gave him like a quick rundown on a few other ideas I had, and just to kind of quickly sum this one up, the idea is he plays around restricted weapon upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants to have as many restricted upgrades as he can. So his hero ability is you can control one additional upgrade that has a restricted keyword for each mount upgrade you control. So these mounts are where you would mount a weapon, and then he has cards that play off of like the number of restricted weapons you control. And the other thing, like the other like sub theme, is each mount upgrade can be exhausted when you attack to give you some benefit. Like for example, this one gives you overkill and piercing. This one gives you ranged. This one lets you divide the damage as you choose. But you can only pick one to use on an attack. And then he has this card, Weapons Hot, that actually lets you use all of them at once for one big attack that gets all of the benefits. So yeah, that was the core mechanic I gave him, and he thought that sounded cool.
And you didn't give the actual mounts restricted themselves so that it then doesn't break it.
Yeah, and like I think that's also a little bit from a thematic standpoint that like the restricted is used to like depict something in your hand, and the mounts like are where you could put something instead of having it in your hand, so they wouldn't be restricted.
But, awesome.
Yeah.
And is this, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this actually the same picture?
I think, yeah,
this is
they're
the
all the
same
same
picture
picture.
manipulated
Yeah.
to sort of then. That is awesome. That's a very similar thing he did for me. Is the end boss in my campaign? I don't want to spoil it for
Hmm.
anybody, but is is represented by 6 cards, kind of like what Kaz did for his like Titanus thing.
Oh, yeah.
And that was all man 3. It's just all man. It's all man 3.
Okay.
It's like I put a credit on the card. I was like, I got to credit you for this. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It's like he actually like he cut them up and like positioned them, and it's just oh my god, just amazing.
Hmm.
It looks awesome. It looks better than it actually plays. This is great. This is awesome. So um, this is not a critique, but why a character that already exists?
So that was actually something we talked about when we were trying to figure out who to make. Me and him both tend to shy away from making official heroes
Hmm.
for a few reasons. One being, like, they're already made, so most people will just want to play the official. And the other being, like, the people who make them are professional designers, and you need to have a pretty good reason for thinking yours is going to be better than theirs, in my opinion.
Oh man, you're talking
So,
yourself down. But they may be professional designers, sure, but they're still human and they make mistakes.
yeah,
Hulk is the
no,
perfect
for sure.
example of that. So
Yep.
there is so many custom heroes, including some of your own, that are better than the official stuff, and I stand by that for
For
100%.
sure. Oh,
Um,
for sure.
uh,
I totally agree with
yeah,
that.
my question was more leaning towards people tend to sort of shy, like exactly your first point. People tend to shy away from the official stuff because it already exists, and so what really more can you do, sort of thing.
Hmm.
There's not really much point. But so did you for this one? So did you have an idea that was specifically War Machine specific, or you had the idea that then fit War Machine as a character?
So, kind of into what you just said, like, there definitely are flaws in the official designs.
Hmm.
War Machine, for example, he's one of my favorite Marvel characters, but I absolutely hate his hero, his official hero.
Right.
I just don't like the mechanic at all, and don't really think it works that well. So I was trying to think of, like, if I was to make a War Machine, what would I do?
Okay. Cool.
And so that's where this came from.
Quite a common thing that new creators do is they rejig the official stuff.
Hmm.
It's a good. I think it's a really good sort of entry point into the creation. Is you take, as long as you do it respectfully, but you take the official one, and then you sort of rejig it to cover up whatever its flaws, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Spidey getting web warrior trait when he doesn't have it, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Or fixing up how his web shooters work and blah blah blah, like that sort of thing, right? So there's quite a lot that are basically just fixes per se, which I hate. I
Yeah.
fixed the official one. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
You just altered the official one.
Yeah.
But you didn't decide to go down that route. You didn't take the official War Machine and sort of just rejig the stuff that you didn't like about it. Your idea was good enough to be its own standalone product that is unique from the official one.
Hmm. Well, and I've done what you just described too. Like, my Spider-Man, for example, was kind of that. I liked the Spider-Man official hero,
Mm.
but there were just a few things I wanted to do differently with it. So he actually has, like, almost the exact same cards on a few of them. Like, he has a swinging web kick, he has a backflip, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do a few different things. But this one, for example, there was not a whole lot I really liked about the official War Machine, so it just kind of came from the ground up.
Listen up,
But,
FFG. War Machine sucks. No.
yeah.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Cool. I mean, you're right. You're not going to get rid of a swinging web kick and backflip, eh? That's madness.
Yeah.
But there are other things that there was actually one. Oh, it's gone from my brain now. But one creator altered one of Spidey's cards, and it's just superior in every way. No pun intended. I can't remember what it is now, but I was just like, that's exactly how it should have been. It's just I love seeing that sort of stuff. The creativity in this community, man, it just blows me away. It really does. I think I'm a pretty creative dude, but I can't. Some of the stuff that gets done on here, I'm just like, what the? Where did you come up with this? How does your brain work?
Yeah.
And why is it so awesome? It's amazing. It's amazing stuff. Well, cool. So, what War Machine for anybody who wants to play him? Is he testable now? Is he available, or are you still got more tweaking to go? What's going on?
He's got a bit more tweaking to do. We're kind of trying to come up with some weapon upgrades, like aspect weapon upgrades, to include with him, because there's not like an overwhelming amount to choose from, and we want to give you a bit more of a design or a choice to make there when picking your weapons. So yeah, we have a few more things we're working out, but
All right.
he's definitely like, this is a playable version, and he's, I'll say, at least fun to play. So yeah, it should be pretty soon. Working out the Nemesis set and stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, you'll post in the channel when he's available for.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I have talked your ear off, dude. Hopefully, this is. Well, is there anything we missed that you wanted to talk about? Did I miss anything?
No, that was that. I just got to ramble on for over an hour, so I'm good. Yeah, that was great.
This has been awesome, and this is exactly what I wanted out of here. I want there's only so much. This is the way it should be that you can handle. Right? It's just I don't think there's any real. No, I'll rephrase that. I was going to say there's no right or wrong. There clearly is. You can't have a zero cost resource generator, for example, right? It's just madness. But
yeah,
but there's no real right or wrong in terms of the creativity. Is what I'm trying to say. I suppose is the whole thing is to some of the best creations out there are people who have thought outside of the box, right? But there are also people who have just slightly rejigged certain things and created a brand new, unique character and experience, right? Which is one of the things why I just love the creativity of this community is that you don't have to do amazing design hacker style stuff all the time, right? Not that it's not great, right? I mean, Danger's rotating wheel thing, right? Not every character needs to have that sort of stuff, right? Sometimes all you just need is just sort of a rejig type thing, and that's perfectly valid as well and stuff. I just slight sort of changes, like Karnak, for example. Karnak's one of my favorite custom heroes, and his mechanic is just so unbelievably simple. So you just increase it or decrease it, and that's the key element. Decrease as well, increase or decrease based on the situation that you find yourself in. It's just simple ideas like that really work it out. And again, for your one, I need to bring it back to you. So it's, Doomsday breaks the rules essentially, right? He's a level 1 villain with 20 HP and 3 attack, right? It's just madness. As soon as you pull him out, it's the exact reaction that you wanted. It's like, what the hell am I doing to do now? I don't even have my web shooters out. What am I supposed to do here? It's things like that, right? But that's the experience that you wanted, and it works perfectly fine. I mean, it's easy to sort of, well, I wouldn't say it's easy, but you're able to sort of dodge around the first devastating quiet blows, especially if you can throw some poor ally in the way, and then and sort of come back and repair and do what you need to do and stuff. And that's the challenge, right? So it's I don't know where I was sort of going with that, but our chat, I guess, is sort of highlighted to me. It's just how good you are at what you do. You are amazing. You kind of tortured before we started recording. You were like, no, Bretta, you're awesome, and you are. So you're a very humble person. But there are so many other sort of creators out there as well that are just doing sort of amazing stuff. And I don't think get the recognition they want, but that they should have. I'm sorry, but also what I wanted from this was to show just how the process sort of works for different people, right? It's different for everybody, right? So, like I said, you've got like the tried and true methods. You've got the other sort of methods. Some people go deep dive into sort of the mechanics and the numbers and stuff. Like Inkwire, for example. Inkwire is a master of the mechanics numbers. Like, he's got spreadsheets and stuff, I imagine. I haven't seen them, but I can only assume. He gave me some feedback about one of the things that I had, and he had like this massive post of all these numbers, and I was just blown away. It's like people like that, like analytical mind. I just love that sort of. I had nothing but respect for that sort of stuff. It's awesome. And then you have the other people that just go with heart. It's like, does this look cool? Does it work cool? Then it's cool. As long as it's cool. Yeah. That's all I care about. And and the happy medium ground sort of stuff. And I think you've done exactly that. You've shown sort of the process that you do and why you do such cool stuff. but also I think will hopefully help people who maybe struggling a little with their own stuff or are brand new to the process or whatever the case may be, just want to sort of stuff. I mean, you've already taught me something. So it's just it's stuff like that. It's just I've already gotten something out of it, so I'm cool. So hopefully, if you're watching this, you've learned something. Beretta's, a master of the customs. He's takes some advice, but the thing is you don't have to do everything. If that process doesn't work for you, try a different process. Different people have different, and hopefully in these spotlights, I'll have some other creators talk about their design process. I mean, you already heard Hax's one. Hopefully, you've watched the Hax episode, and if you haven't, stop listening to this and go watch the Hax episode. And his design process, like he went really quite deep into it and why he does what he does. So hopefully, I'll have some more. But anyway, Beretta, thank you so much for taking the time to sort of go through all this sort of stuff and highlight how your brain works. It's awesome. I love it. and for
thank you.
Come for the part 2. I love it.
Yeah, thank you. It meant a lot to come back on and just again get to ramble. I know a lot of us in the community just we're all in this community because we love the game so much. So just getting to talk about it, and especially like my creations, my babies, I just get to ramble on about why I did certain things. It's fun for me too. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and more importantly though, I would really like to hear from you. Was there something quite helpful from this? Did you learn something new? Has it been like a eureka moment? That's what I really want to know. Did you have like a eureka moment? Watch this, where you were like, oh my god, now I can make that hero that I've always wanted a hero. They're my favorite hero. Now I can figure out how to do it. Boom! I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna get out there. If you had that, let us know. I think I think I can safely speak for Beretta. That would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So, and we want to see what you do. Like, I mean, if you are you desperate to make? Like I just saw, there's somebody in the community making a Shadowhawk hero. I didn't think that I would ever see the day where I would see a Shadowhawk hero. And that just amazes me.
I don't even know who that is.
Oh, he's a character from Image Comics. So it's you know what I mean? It's just that sort of just blows my mind. So I don't know anything about their mechanics, but I just know that they're being made, and that's awesome. It means I don't have to do it, so that's great. It's brilliant. So if this video has helped you in any way, please let us know. If you want to reach out to Beretta, say hi, please do so. I think it'd be great. And check out his stuff. I'll have links to his stuff, of course, like I did for the first episode he was on. I challenge you: grab the Doomsday scenario, put Sinister Six and Masters of Evil modules in there, and if you think your deck is the greatest deck ever made, do that. Doomsday with Masters of Evil. I challenge you. You're gonna get squashed. But it's worth it just for the Superman's there to help you. It's fine. He's got 20 hit points. You're all good. That's it. As always, the final word goes to you, Beretta. Anything you want to say at the end?
No, just again, thank you. Like, I mean, I'm trying to help other people like get into creating and stuff and help them with their design process, and you're giving me a platform for that. So yeah.
You're welcome anytime. You're welcome anytime, Beretta. I really love talking to you. And as always, please make sure that you tell the people that you love them as often as you can. And that includes yourself. You need to love yourself before you can love anybody else. And no one's more important than you are. Take care, everybody. Bye.